Alrighty, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday. It's 25th of June. Feels like just yesterday we started June, but okay, I'll take it. End of June means summer is coming. That's all I'm going to say. It's a little way off still, but it's coming. And we've got lots to get to this morning. A little later on in the show, for those people who feel that they don't get their dose of politics and world affairs, well, we've got an amazing guest popping in. She's called Brooke Goldstein. She's a human rights attorney and author, filmmaker. She's also founder and executive director of the Lawfare project, and she will talk to us about all sorts of international affairs, which I think you will find very, very interesting. Certainly, a lot of them are pertinent to what's going on in the world this week, let alone just in the last few months. So we'll get into that in a short while. Also, we go from Brooke to someone else who's here in the studio with me right now, Blake. So we got two Bs in this morning, and Blake Morgan is a qualified personal trainer, a competitive bodybuilder, CrossFit athlete. He's also an online coach, and he is right here from Joburg. Well, Benoni, let's be fair. Because someone's got to stand up for Benoni, right? Nice to see you, dude. Yeah, thanks for coming in this morning. I mean, there are so many things we can start talking about, but let's get straight to the kill switch here. Is that I think there seems to be across the world, but also here in South Africa, to a lesser or greater degree, I'm not sure, this amazing thing that's happened where people actually want to get into shape. I mean, you're in a different league, obviously, being a competitive bodybuilder. That takes a different layer of discipline on all kinds of levels. But what do you think it is that changed? Because I remember the only oaks who used to go to gym when I was a kid were competitive bodybuilders.
Yes, 100%.
And you know, there were 5 or 6 gyms in the whole of Gauteng. I mean, at that stage, it wasn't even Gauteng, right?
Yeah.
So what happened? What do you think happened there?
Well, I think social media plays a lot of role with it. You know what I mean? I think there's social media, because obviously every post you look at, you know, there's some sort of, you know, influencer talking about, you know, the perfect physique, how to
Not
train
even talking
easy.
about, just showing pictures.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So
it's become like almost like there are bragging credits.
Yeah.
Right? And I think you're spot on there. It's like social media has changed the way that people look at themselves, the way they look at other people. I mean, I think it's way worse for girls, because I think women are competing and have been for thousands of years in a way that men don't entirely understand. I mean, guys obviously competitive as hell with each other, and guys want to win more than anything else.
definitely.
But it seems to me that girls' reputation building and sometimes reputation savaging seem to be their preferred tools. And while guys will go, wow, that girl's beautiful, or that girl's, she's fat, or she's attractive, or she's like looking amazing, they don't really go into the detail of it. But girls with each other will talk about each other, and will talk about other girls they don't know, and they'll analyze it a lot more. They'll have more scrutiny involved in the process. And I feel like guys have picked up on a bit of that too. They're starting to do the same thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
I think the whole aspect of, you know, the physical look has become quite a big play in community and society now.
Sure.
I think now, because I mean, you know, going through the years, you know, you'd have a look at like a GQ or a Calvin Klein model, you know, and that was few and far between on magazines.
Well, it used to be like Men's Health was the apex. Certainly when like in my adult life. And I don't know when Men's Health came onto the scene, but I do remember that like getting onto the cover of that meant you were a fine specimen.
Yeah, 100%.
Before that, there wasn't really an arbitrator for that. You know, you either like a good-looking movie star, or you were enormous and like strong, like Arnold or Jean-Claude Van Damme or Sylvester Stallone or all of those guys that we watched in the action movies.
Yeah.
It was like there were those two categories,
exactly,
right?
Exactly, yeah, and 100%. And now with how big bodybuilding's got, like especially obviously with the classic physique, and you know you got like Chris Bumstead and stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I think just like his not his stigma, but the way he goes about it and the way he carries himself as an athlete, you know what I mean, like his personality. I think just his following alone, you know, has grown the industry massive folds, you know. So, and I think now people also now are becoming a lot more conscious about health. You know what I mean? And I also think as the years are going on, you're finding people to get a lot more sicker nowadays. You know, there's a lot more like shows of cancer in, you know, between 30 to 40 ages, you know, so it's scary.
But I want to talk to you about something that I think you're uniquely on this show, because we haven't had anyone who's like a proper competitive bodybuilder on for a very long time, as far as I can recall. And there's a dark side to that.
Yes.
Because first of all, there must be 100 different competitions now, right? Then there are people who abuse all kinds of steroids and the rest of it, and do huge damage to their kidneys and their livers and God knows what else. But they're, again, desperate to win.
Yes.
And you've got to admire just the way that you would a prime athlete in any other sport.
Exactly.
The kinds of sacrifices they make. Some guys obviously take it a little bit too far. And I think probably some women, because they're women bodybuilders who are as competitive.
Oh, no, definitely.
And can I tell you, like some of them could fuck me up in a fight.
Yeah, no, for sure.
They could just look at me and I think I'd give up straight away.
Yeah.
But it is incredible how the pressure starts very early now. Like you got schoolboys who are spending hours at the gym.
Yes.
Every day. And they might not even have grown to their full height yet.
Yeah.
You know, bone length in the legs and that kind of thing is a consideration. But you've been in this for a while. And maybe it's a good idea to just go straight into the part that you think is not so good, not so kosher. And then we can circle back to the stuff that's worth paying attention to, that is about improving your physique, being healthier, feeling good, being able to pick up heavy things and do difficult stuff.
Exactly.
That I love. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. But what is this dark side from your point of view and your experience?
So from like the way I'd see it, the dark side in bodybuilding. So, you know, when it comes to obviously show prep, so, you know, if you're looking at a competitive bodybuilder, so, you know, everyone just sees the glam, you know, guys eating a lot of food, doing a lot of cardio, training really hard.
That meal prep thing is ridiculous,
you know
right?
What I mean?
Isn't it?
No, it's the worst. I think that you spend most of your time in the kitchen just preparing all your food. So I think when it comes down to it, like when you look at it, like everyone just sees the glam side, you know, and how amazing the physique looks. But I mean, you could be in the best shape of your life, but feel like the absolute biggest piece of shit, you know, like just feel absolutely like negative, unhealthy, no energy.
Yeah.
So the thing is, then as your calories start to drop off, you know what I mean, you start to feel so negative, you feel tired, you've mood swings, loss of sex drive completely. I mean, male and female. So
why does that you see, that I didn't know about. I mean, there's lots that I don't know.
Yes.
I've heard a couple of things. I've heard about the mood swings. I've heard about the low energy because you're not having anything that's got carbs in it, for example. Another thing is the water that you have to kind of drop before a show.
Yeah.
And some guys take this to extremes where, like, I mean, listen, it must be a very painful process physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Because you see them, their skin is like,
it's like
paper thin, right?
Yeah.
And you can see all the veins and things, and then they spray paint themselves orange or God knows why.
You look like a trophy.
You got to explain that to me at some point. But this thing, I didn't realize the sex drive goes down. I would have thought, like most people who are uneducated about these kinds of things, that when you are an athlete in peak condition, your body kind of would put the sex drive up.
Yeah, no.
Because you would be more in demand and you would need more. And that's not the case?
No, it's completely the opposite. So you could be looking in your complete awesome physique, you know, and that's when people would be most attracted to you. Well,
sure, you'd think
society,
so, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in that state, when you're so depleted of carbs, your cortisone levels are high, your sex drive is completely low because your testosterone is taking a bit of a crash. So your desires for any of that is completely out the window. I mean, your sleeping is terrible. You're waking up every 2 hours because your body fat's low. You're getting up to pee every 2 hours because you're drinking excessive amounts of water. So even like with vitamin C, so you've got to be taking like 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. So in the morning, afternoon, and night. So that helps reduce the cortisol levels, reduces stress on the body. And then obviously leading up to the show, you'll drop your vitamin C because it acts like a diuretic. So that helps with dropping water. Right. So as like going back to your question, where the guys
what kind of level do these guys drop it to? Because if I hop on one of those cheap scales, they give you kind of a a water percentage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not very accurate.
No.
Obviously, the way you guys would do it would be far more accurate.
Yes.
You'd use calipers and all kinds of things to calculate the amount of visceral fat. And
That's it, yeah.
But what's healthy and where does it tip over into, oh my God, this is not good?
So normally roundabout on stage, you're looking at guys anything between like 5% body fat. 5% body fat. So now you must remember 5% body fat. When people see that, they think, oh, wow, that's amazing. That's where I want to look. But I mean, that's a once-off. That's a once-off. Like, that's not healthy.
No, I mean, you will get sick very, very quickly.
And you
pick up everything.
You're looking at organ problems, organ failure.
Yeah.
And guys' physiques, and also can become a very big mental thing, is because guys, from that day, you can lose that physique within 3 days.
So, okay, what I'm asking for is permission to be slightly fat. So what do you think is a good body fat percentage? And what do you think people should be looking at in terms of they're kind of, you hear about BMI, but I don't think it's an excellent way to measure anything, because they'll tell you you're morbidly obese if you're at like 25.
Yeah. So I think the standard average would be between 10 and 15%.
That's good, right?
That's good. That's healthy. You know what I mean? That's healthy. You got enough fats for your organs and for your body, for energy stores to carry on.
Right.
And a lot of the people will look at a guy at about between 6 and 7% and be like, that's where I want to be. You know what I mean? But I don't want to prep for a show, but I want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big step up if you decide that you're actually going to take part in a show.
Yeah.
Because there you're up against other people. And listen, some of these oaks have some serious balls going up there because they don't look great, but they think they do.
They do.
Well, maybe in their little town or whatever, someone said to them once, gee, jy's sterk. Jy moet bodybuilding doen. And then the guy goes in there and compared to some of these guys who might have been training from a very young age, or they might have been ultra disciplined, because that's the other thing. It takes time, right?
Yes, definitely. It takes a lot of time.
You got to spend a fortune.
I've seen a few of those guys at show day where you you want to kind of tell the guy, like, man,
drop out now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea for you, but if you've got the balls to stand up and do it, well, go for it.
Yeah, listen, I think that like anything, it can be taken too far, but because it's a visual thing, people are much more judgmental than maybe they would be if you were a tennis player who was obsessed with fitting in another practice, or doing X number of meals over X amount of time, with popping 7-8 pills a morning, drinking protein shakes the whole time. They wouldn't give you as much shit.
Yes.
But because bodybuilding, it has both a good and a bad reputation at the same time. And it's got like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Olympia. You mentioned Chris Bumstead earlier. These are people who have they've shown you what the human body can do and look like. And then you obviously get the oaks who are dropping, dumbbells that weigh 100 kilograms on each side on the ground and smashing the concrete to pieces. Yeah. And the two are not the same.
No, not at all. Not at all. And bodybuilding, and that's where people get it wrong, is because bodybuilding and powerlifting are two different things.
Yeah.
So, people think that bodybuilding is powerlifting. So they think they need to go into the gym and lift the heaviest thing that they possibly can for every single set. It's not like that.
Oh, well, the veins are popping out on their heads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nosebleeds, and you know what I mean. So it's not about powerlifting. It's about developing that mind to muscle connection.
Right.
So I try to explain that to a lot of clients. When you're going through movements, to obviously actually focus on that specific muscle you're working. You know what I mean? You're not just using the whole body just to shake and move. It's a controlled movement to actually feel that muscle that you're moving, and then you grow from there. Because once you develop mind to muscle connection, then you're actually putting more focus into that muscle. You're dropping your weight that you're using. Normally when you're going to be using 100 kilos, you're only using 35 now, because your contraction on that specific muscle.
But so much of his ego too.
Oh, no, ego lifting is one of the biggest things.
Obviously, it depends what gym you're at, but I used to have a trainer, and she said to me she used to go to a gym in the East Rand where these oaks they had only these enormously heavy weights. They didn't have weights up to 35 or below. They only had upwards of 50.
Oh, yeah.
And then she said these mutants would come in there.
Yeah.
And they'd check what the other guys are doing and just try to beat them. I mean, clearly it's like anything. If that's your little environment, then people become obsessed with it. There was a question up here just now, which I think is interesting. Ronnie Coleman had 0.3% body fat at some stage. Is that even possible, says Dirk?
Yeah, that's pretty much what they did state. Yeah.
How the hell?
Yeah,
how?
It's mad. But that's close to death, man.
Yeah, you can't survive on that.
Yeah, no, that's
not a
very
chance.
Close to death. Yeah.
So, all right, let's just talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do as an online coach, because I see a lot of people who shouldn't be doing this, doing it. I mean, clearly, you've got the CV to be able to do this with, experience. You've got clients who you can use as references for this kind of thing. But I see a lot of people start up. They go to gym. That's all they've done. They go to gym as a normal Joe or Tom or whatever. And then they suddenly decide, I think what I'll do is I'll just start working out meal preps based on what I do for a whole bunch of clients who just don't want to be fat. And I'll tell them what exercises to do. And then they'll pay me money. And this is going to be easy because it's scalable. I can put like 200 people on this program. It's not that easy. No. You actually need to know the client.
Yeah.
Because people are all very different, right?
100%.
So how do you figure that out? Because I also see a lot of charlatans online who don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're probably giving people dangerous and stupid advice.
Yeah, and I've seen some guys come to me with previous coaches' information and stuff, and it's quite scary to see what people are giving.
What's the worst advice you've seen from these idiots?
Wow, man. So when it comes to like chemical base and cycle bases and stuff like that, where some coaches want people to take, like you're looking at milligrams and grammages that pro bodybuilders wouldn't be taking, and this guy's probably maybe been in the gym for like a year.
What's with these oaks who eat pre-workout powder as like a flex?
Yeah.
They get in the car and they take like one of those
a dry scooping.
Yeah, the scoop of not protein pre-workout.
Pre-workout, dry scooping, yeah.
And then they like it. I don't know what it does to them, but they look ridiculous.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
I think
someone needs to explain that to me.
It's more of like a trend, but obviously because you dry scooping it, so they think it gets into your system a lot quicker. You know what I mean? Just dry scooping.
They haven't heard of cocaine.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, if you actually mix it with a little bit less water and put it into your system, it's going to flush into the system a lot quicker anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that when I've used it, when I've thought to use it, and when I've remembered to use it before I go training, then adding water seems like the obvious thing to do. First of all, that can't be very pleasant in your mouth.
No.
Right? Do they do it because they think it gives them that like rush of energy that
extra
they need?
Kick. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
People are looking for.
Yeah.
People are looking for a.
And that's another thing that's also scary is caffeine. Caffeine in gym. Like, I mean, guys are coming into scoops and they're telling me, no, we double scoop this, and then we have Monster, and then take 3 or 4 of these fat burners, and next thing you know, the guy's on like 1,500 milligrams of caffeine before he started working out.
Can't be good
and his
for you,
heart
right?
rate hasn't even started to elevate because of exercise. But his heart rate's already at maybe like 130, 140, hasn't even started.
So what, since we're talking about the heart rate thing, because I've heard so many people, and clearly you've put a lot of time into figuring this out, and you know what the healthy range is. But I've heard the most important thing is that you can get your heart rate down quickly. Yeah. That's a sign of overall cardiac health, is if you can go up to 150, but then you can bring it down to 60, 70 in a very short space of time. Yeah. It doesn't take you like a long time to get there, and you're not sitting there and your heart's going like this after you've done whatever exercise you're doing.
Yeah, that's correct.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank God.
I
sound like a moron. Okay, so let's look at this. Bitcoin Bot says, I can't imagine Gareth on pre-workout, very jittery. No, I find it like makes me like itchy and shit,
the
right?
tingles.
Yeah, so I get that. That's all that happens to me. Thankfully, Cunning Stunt says, thankfully the bodybuilding scene seems to be fading, and it's about overall health and wellness as opposed to selling yourself on stage with 5% body fat and kidney problems. You know, there have been so many stories in the news about guys who have particularly kidney failure.
Yeah.
I suppose it's because you're putting such pressure on them.
Yes.
And the kidneys filter the blood. And now, you're not giving the body the nutrients it needs, and maybe you're giving it stimulants that it shouldn't have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you heard of bodybuilders recently in the last 5 or 10 years that have died because of things like organ failure?
Yeah, well, even on social media now, there was a Brazilian bodybuilder who just died now recently after he's getting his pro card.
What is a pro? Okay, explain the pro card before we even get there. So what is a pro card?
Pro card. So obviously, with everybody that's competing at this stage, are all amateurs. So you're all amateur bodybuilding until you go pro. So you'll go to a pro show. Then what you'll do. So obviously, I compete in bodybuilding. So I'll compete in open. So it's all open. So I do open under 100, and then you get open heavy, which is 100 kilos plus.
Oh, so it's based on your weight?
Based on your weight,
okay.
Yeah. So in bodybuilding, you'll have under 70, under 80, under 90, under 100, and over 100. So you've got 5 categories.
Okay.
So then to get a pro card, you have to win your lineup. So you have to win your lineup, and then the first place of each lineup. So you'll have an overall. You have to beat the first place of each person of your lineup.
So pro card is a big deal.
Yeah, very big deal. Very big.
Wow.
Deal.
Okay. I should apologize to some people who've told me they've got a pro card, and I was like, yeah. So
yeah, no.
So it's a big deal.
It's very tough to get.
Right. And I didn't realize they did it by weight either.
Yes, yeah. So it's the same thing. Also, like when you've got your different categories, like you've got classic physique. Classic physique that goes according to your height. So according to your height, you have to weigh a certain amount. So you can't be just massive and short. So it goes according to your height and weight. And then you've got your 212, where you've got to be around 94 kilos.
Okay.
But a lot of the 212 guys are a lot more shorter because they're pretty much as wide as they are short. So, yeah. And then you have your men's physique. Yeah, men's physique that also goes according to weight and height.
Gun says, wiping your ass is an art when you're jacked. And then somebody else asked about, like, do you have to buy an extra long toothbrush if you're a bodybuilder? We got all these jokers. Yeah, some of these people are fat that are commenting. Let's just say that. But yeah, Shaw Roden won the 2018 Olympia and died 3 years later.
Yes,
says
Shawn
just
Roden.
plain Jared.
Yeah, very good athlete.
Are we in this country? Are we supplying a steady stream of good quality bodybuilders that can compete internationally, or is it a very local market for that? And most of our guys, when they get out there into the rest of the world, don't really perform.
So the problem what we face here is that we do have a lot of good athletes, but obviously bodybuilding is an expensive sport. So it's a very inexpensive sport. And to get the backing to do these shows, and a lot of the shows where you want to go compete in are all overseas. So it's big money to go.
So like that's additional. But when you say it's an expensive sport, is that because of the time you got to put in, the meal prep, the supplements,
food, supplements?
Okay, are there things that I don't know about that cost money in that? Because I mean, just as someone who works and does normal stuff and tries to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I have to do those things too.
Yes.
So why is it so expensive?
Well, you must remember, so if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you're probably eating about 6 to 7 times the amount of food you would eat in a day.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's where that meal prep stuff comes in. That's where the meal prep,
yeah, because you're eating 7 meals a day.
And that food's shit, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
what are you allowed and not allowed?
You're not allowed quite a lot, but so pretty much I'm actually 9 weeks out from show at the moment.
Okay, what's the show you're taking part in?
So I'm taking place in the Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice, it's on the 6th of September.
Okay.
Yeah, bodybuilding.
All right, so you have to prep now for that in September.
Yeah, I started prep already. So I'm actually going through a bit of low carb at the moment. Oh. Yeah, so I started low carb about 2 weeks ago.
You wanted to shoot yourself after waking up this morning.
Yeah, yeah, wasn't too bad.
Okay, and what kind of things do you eat?
Yeah, so at the current moment, so I'm eating 8 eggs in the morning, 75 grams oats.
8 eggs?
Yeah, 8 eggs.
Jesus, how do you eat them? What do you do with them?
I make an omelette.
Oh.
It's pretty simple and basic.
An 8-egg omelette?
Yeah.
It must be a mountain.
Well, it's 6 egg whites and 2 whole eggs.
Oh.
So chuck the yolks.
Okay, all right. And the whites are actually good for you?
It's one of the cleanest form of pure protein that you can take in.
That's what they make a lot of the supplements out of, supposedly.
No, actually.
Like the protein powders.
Protein powders made from cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, they disguise it with all that flavor, but it's actually just cheese.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like
I always wondered why I didn't like that stuff so much. Very good athlete after Gareth just told him he died from his sport. I suppose you mean that guy Sean Roden that we were talking about earlier. Dirk says the percentage of bodybuilders with health issues is probably very similar to the percentage of people who don't exercise and have health problems. Do you think it's like that? I mean, is it when you take on this as your sport, are you taking on so much risk? I can't imagine that's true that it's the same as people who
definitely not.
Don't do any exercise. Those people have massive problems. And just the heart getting the blood around the body for those people is a very, very tough job.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is that there's a lot of, like, when obviously competitive bodybuilders, you know, they take a lot more precautionary steps, you know what I mean? They do blood work often, they have a look where where all their levels are at, you know. So they monitor their physiques quite closely.
So do you have to go to the doctor reasonably often while you're doing this?
Normally every 3 months.
Okay.
Every 3 months, you do checkups and just to see where your pressures are at, and your ASLs and your LDLs and your CKs, and
I don't know what any of those are.
Yeah. So
okay, well, I won't pretend I know. The whey foam stuff that when they make cheese. So that's JP saying that in the comments. What's the average cost of your toilet paper per month? Says Nico. How many rolls? Surely you need a sponsor. Toilet paper sponsor. Is that something you need? Do you shit more?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you think about it, I probably go to the toilet about 7 times a day.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not great. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, and that's just number 2. Yeah.
My God.
It's probably like 30 times a day.
You must be peeing like a racehorse the whole day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's also why the kidneys take a hammering. Yeah. Okay, I got you. How much protein should I be eating per kilogram of goal weight? Is it 2.5? Says Traveling Ninja Turtle. I don't know. I mean, that seems like a very arbitrary number to assign to. Well, how many grams of protein should I be eating per kilogram of goal weight? I mean, protein powder doesn't reduce your weight.
Protein powder?
No. It's a meal replacement for some people, or it's a supplement post-workout for people, right?
Protein powder, like your maximum would be maybe 2 scoops after your workout.
Yeah.
That's about it, yeah.
Right. And I think for people who probably don't have time to eat anything else when they, for example, leave early for work in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I realized when I started taking training seriously, mostly because of this coach that I had at the time, she said to me, if you don't have time to eat a breakfast, just have a protein shake in the morning before you start your day.
Yeah.
And then that will take the place of a meal, but it's not going to it's not going to grow your muscles, it's not going to remove fat.
But it's just better than not having anything.
Okay, got you. I have to shit, says Tabo. This is great. I'm so glad we're all sharing how often we shit this morning. What a lovely show this is. Tabo says, I have to shit every morning when I get to the office because of creatine. Is that what happened? Does creatine make you shit?
Creatine, well, that's news to me. And
Tabo, there's something else, dude. You got the squirts.
Just check where you're getting your creatine from.
Yeah, something's wrong. Someone's poisoning you, Tabo. Dirk says, how do you find time for the gym with all that shitting going on? You see, this is the audience I love. I love you people. What can I use to replace protein powder? They're so bloody expensive. That's become an unbelievable business.
Yeah.
Is the supplements and meal replacements and the pills and the powders and this is a massive business.
Yeah, it's scary how massive it is.
And they make a ton of money, right?
And the thing is what's also scary is they keep starting to separate ingredients and then start saying you need to have this plus that.
Yeah.
And then this plus
that.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed that what started off as like, a couple of options at the local discount, and there are whole shops that just do these things. But just at the discount that I've noticed, there's now a whole aisle. And then there are these pills, extra, boost, ultra, fuck you, I'll destroy you powder. And then you've got these pills that you're meant to take as well because these will, I don't know, give you energy or something else. How much money do you have to spend every month on that kind of shit?
Yeah, so I'm very basic. I don't go too much into supplements. I like to supplement with food.
Right.
So I prefer to go the food route. I've always been like that. Like I'm not too much into the supplements. Like pretty much only supplements I would take is maybe just the BCAAs and creatine for intra-workout.
Right.
And then I don't really even do whey protein that much. I just supplement an extra meal. So I mean, to answer that guy's question, you know, if the best option to supplement for a whey protein shake would be to have a healthy meal.
What's the toughest muscle to exercise for you? What's the worst thing in your week of different sets that you have to do? Which one do you hate? When you think about it, it makes you miserable.
Yeah, well, when it comes down to it, like when you start getting into, you know, your training and enjoying it and stuff like that, it's all pretty tough. But still, no matter what athlete it is, it'll always be leg day, man.
Legs, yeah.
It'll always be leg day.
You're just so fucking tired after that, and it's sore no matter how often you do it, right?
And it's such a big muscle group; it requires so much from you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, technically, you should probably do 2 leg days a week.
Yeah, you should,
because they're different muscles that you are working in order to try and get to the level. It's much more fun to just do the upper body. Yeah. Much more fun to do chest or arms.
Yeah, it's much more fun until you look like an upside down pear. Then it's not that
fun. And I suppose also the big problem for so many people is there's some muscles that you just cannot do anything about. Forearms and calves, right? Yeah. You just can't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a basic amount of kind of genetic luck that you get.
It's limited.
Yeah, and so I suppose for some guys it's very frustrating.
Yeah, and obviously, like calves, like people think that you can't grow. They can be grown to an extent. You know what I mean? You can change them slightly, but also like calves it's a very, very, very dense muscle. So you need to put a lot of load and more holds and time and attention. So you've got to compress that muscle. You know, it's not about putting a heavy load and going quickly. It's about doing slow repetition and holds.
How much do you bench put?
I didn't really even bench.
Don't you?
No.
Oh, come on. Isn't that the question everybody should be?
Everyone on. Well, my heaviest bench is 170.
Don't you like go out when you decide to go and have a drink with mates or whatever, and then you get some little guy who just decides now he wants to ask you stupid questions like that, you know, because he can see that you're a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Because you could see someone who's a bodybuilder.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, these are not regular size or shape people.
Yeah.
They stand out.
Yes.
So someone is bound to look for shit with you occasionally, or think they're being very, very funny by asking you questions like, how much you bench put, so that they can have a competition.
Or do you even lift, bro?
Do you even lift? Oh, Jesus. All right. Quads and glutes exercises are designed by a sadist. Rather just never wear shorts. That's what Dirk says. Okay, I think that's probably a good idea. Is it true that lean biltong is a good source of creatine? Nita Keeler.
Yeah, it has aspects
creatine?
Of it. Yeah,
really.
But
okay.
Obviously, I think that the amount of biltong you'd have to eat to get your dose would be too much.
8 eggs a day. You need 20 chickens just in case some don't perform, says Nico. He's probably got chickens. And Bitcoin Boat says eat chicken, but not the KFC kind.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's very good.
It's a good start.
And then I suppose there are also. I mean, you just mentioned now the kinds of things that people hate exercising, and leg days obviously. What's the best one? What's the one that you go, oh my God, lovely. Today is going to be fantastic.
That would be back and shoulders.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of people probably pay less attention to back than they should, because a lot of people are more about what people will see when you're looking at them.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And the back is also, if you don't have a strong back or a strong core for that matter, you're going to be in pain.
That's it.
You're going to have sore shoulders, all kinds of things are going to go wrong.
And your back is your second biggest muscle group.
Right.
So that requires just as much as attention as your legs.
Shit. Okay. Putting a lot of us in our place there. I sit far away from bodybuilders, says Cutting Stunt, because those protein farts are potent. Are you married?
Yes.
Okay. Does your wife complain about the protein farts?
She complains about quite a lot about with bodybuilding.
Okay. So well.
Yeah. So it's quite a list.
Does she like you bodybuilding?
She does.
Okay.
She does. She prefer. Well, I don't know. It was pick the less of two evils. You know what I mean? So I got into bodybuilding and competitive sports and stuff like that because back in my youth, you know what I mean, I took the jaw scene pretty hard, you know. I think I put as much dedication and determination into
fantastic
partying.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know
I did too.
So,
I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, 100%. But now obviously the main focus was just to put everything into sport.
Right. And Benoni.
Benoni being in
Benoni, that's credit, you know? Yeah. People take you seriously. And when did you start? How old were you when you began that?
So I did my first bodybuilding show in 2015.
Okay.
2015. But
how old were you then?
I was, I think, 26.
Okay. Yeah. Now, some people would say that's late.
Yeah.
What age do you have to retire from bodybuilding?
Well, there's not really any age, eh? There's not really, because you get masters. You get masters over 50. You get masters over 60. I've even helped a few guys prep at 55 for shows.
I have such respect. You'll never find me being mean to anyone who's old or fat at the gym.
Yeah, no,
I'll
100%.
never be mean to them.
No,
I'll be mean to people outside of there, but they're at least trying.
They're
right?
there. Yeah, they showed up.
Yeah, and you imagine how bloody hard it is if you weigh 160 kilograms.
That's it.
And you have to drag yourself to the gym and then get on that treadmill. That can't be an easy
pleasant.
process.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, even if they're doing 20 minutes of just walking on there, that's terrific.
That's a great
I'm a fan.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and what sort of people come to you for coaching? I imagine you get a huge range of people, right?
Yeah, massive range for people. Quite a male, female. I get youth. I get old, young.
Who are the hardest work? The actual ones who want to compete? Are they the toughest to coach because it's complicated?
Yeah. So you know a lot of people that I train, you know, are people that are looking just to obviously, you know, better their lifestyle. You know, get fitter, become healthier. You know, it's more for like longevity. So those are more like the clients that I'm getting, you know, for like health reasons. But with regards to athletes, that's when it becomes really hard. Is because a lot of guys that, you know, see you compete or hear about competing and then think, okay, cool, I just want to, you know, jump on stage. But then when you start putting, you know, processes and plans and everything in place, and these guys start to realize what it takes, you know, it becomes extremely difficult because, you know, the guys aren't following procedures, aren't following plans. Athletes can be quite a headache. But you do get some really good dedicated athletes which follow the plan and follow the process, but a lot of them don't.
Here's a question which you could probably answer. How do I deal with, and this is from somebody who says that they train 4 times a week. They're by no means a bodybuilder. But how do I deal with, where is this question now? It's just disappeared. Oh, here we go. Jethro says, but I gym 4 times a week. How do I handle tendinitis? My left arm is a shit show at the moment.
Tendinitis, yeah. Tendinitis, that, like with everything, it needs rest.
Okay, yeah.
It needs massive
and
rest.
also, I suppose for some of these people, you don't want to overdo it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I hear a lot about bodybuilders who've torn their pectoral muscles or they've severely injured an arm because they're lifting a weight that's too heavy.
Yeah.
So you really have to know what you're doing. And also, you can correct me if I'm wrong here too, you have to vary your training schedule. You have to change it all the time because your body gets used to certain things and then it just becomes
not 100%. People tend to think that. I mean, when I go to the gym, I see newbies and beginners doing the most complex stuff that they've obviously seen some YouTuber guy doing. These guys haven't developed any form of muscle density or any form of muscle as yet, but you've got them doing the most craziest shit that I've ever seen. And I'm just like all you need to do is just stick to the basics. It's like that with anything in life, you know what I mean? You just stick to the common basics, have a set gym program, follow that for anything between 3 to 6 months, but your goal is to better that. So week by week is to better it, more reps, more sets, you know, a heavier load. Just do a better workout. And then from there, you can start to alter it, not change completely. Because changing completely, you're not giving those certain muscle groups enough attention in 1 week.
So what other stuff do you do? You're competing in September. Apart from actually doing weight training, do you do cardio? Do you do other things as a part of a daily routine or a weekly routine that help you to get into the shape that you need to be in for the competition?
Yeah, so at the current moment, so I'm doing 45 minutes on the Stairmaster every day.
Oh, that's boring. Hey,
Well,
what do
man.
you listen to music? Do you listen to podcasts? What do you do to
I try to do as much as possible when I'm on that thing. Yeah, I listen to music, podcasts,
write a
phone
novel?
people. Yeah, you know.
Because it's boring.
No, it is.
Fuck, cardio's boring.
And especially steady state cardio.
Yeah.
It's just, and the thing is 45 minutes. You can't get away from it. You can't do it faster. You can't do it slow. You're there for 45 minutes. You're there.
Yeah.
So I try to get 10,000 steps in a day. So
Right.
average 10,000 steps in a day plus my 45 minutes cardio. Getting my 6 liters of water in the day. And the thing is also people think that, you know, so obviously got my water, yeah.
I could do. I have done 6 liters of water a day, and I'm not competing anything. I think that you should drink a lot of
Yeah,
water
you should.
every day, right? So
Water is so important
it's
for
probably
everything.
a sign of general health if you're
Yeah.
if you're consuming upwards of 4 liters of water a day and no more than about 7. Because also you can, everybody says, oh, well, the one thing that you'll never have enough of is water. You can actually
you can
drink
drown
too much.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? All right. What other things? You said you drink the water, you do the Stairmaster. Do you do things like the ice plunges and the saunas and the
The saunas I don't do. Like ice bars I do here and there, obviously for inflammation and recovery. I try to get as much like rehab work in, you know, deep tissue massage, scraping, because that obviously just helps release muscle fibers, helps the muscle to grow better. Posing every day.
Never heard of scraping.
So scraping is with a blade. They take a blade.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
take a blade
who
and they
does
scrape
that?
the
A
muscle.
physiotherapist or a...
So like a bio.
Oh, biokineticist.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, that's something I absolutely had no idea
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah, it's something that's not fun that you want to go through.
No, sure. And
Yeah.
the posing. Now, obviously, you've done this for a while, so you know what you're doing. And you've also got over the awkwardness of having to do those funny moves that the
Yeah.
guys do. But in the beginning, you must have thought, I probably look ridiculous.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. And then on stage, the whole point of a pose is to show off
Everything
the
that you
overall
worked with.
physique
Yeah.
and in particular certain muscles that will,
Yes.
because you got judges there who are looking for stuff. They're like you,
Yes.
probably have been bodybuilders or know something about it. They're not just schlubs who walk off the street, so they know what to look for.
Exactly.
So when you pull some funny pose, like everybody makes fun of these poses,
Yeah.
and a lot of people seem to think that they make for great profile pictures. But it's a skill to learn that
Yes.
stuff.
Sometimes posing can be one of the hardest parts of bodybuilding, is because people just think you're just standing and doing a side chest. You're
It's
just
a
showing the
performance.
chest and the bicep. But I mean, in that movement, you're making sure that you're keeping your abs contracted. You're showing your obliques, so you're squeezing your obliques. You're pushing your hands together, flex the biceps, squeeze the chest over.
And you
pushing
must
the
want to
toes.
pass out when you walk off the
Yeah,
stage.
and you low on carbs, low on water. So, and then also you got to push the foot into the floor. So you show the calf, you show the glutes and the hammy, and then you got to squeeze the glute. So in each movement, you're thinking about flexing 6 different body parts.
And most of us can only think about one at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, you can also, you've got to make sure that your breathing's under controls, because as soon as you, and your stomach comes out, they're minus points from you. So you have to have your stomach flat 24/7 while you're on stage.
Yeah. And why orange? Why do they always look orange on stage?
Yeah, I don't think it's always
understand.
supposed to be orange. I think some people's skin tones just don't adapt. Mine, I seem to just go like really like dark. Like I end up looking like an actual trophy.
Oh.
So yeah, I don't go orange. I just go. I think it's because of my pasty skin. So
All right. Well, this is all very interesting because I've never actually asked some of these questions, and I've you're curious about it, but you also think, I don't know, ask this in case the guy thinks I'm being rude. Because
yeah, no, 100%.
And it's like any sport. You only figure out when you've spoken to people who are at the top of their game what it actually takes.
exactly.
And some of the stuff is stuff they've only learned after 5-10 years of doing something. Yeah,
I
pretty wild.
still even find myself learning from year to year. So every year there's something new to learn. I mean, because I spent 2 years in the Middle East competing and coaching and bodybuilding.
Here we go. Listen to this. Is the toughest part of being a personal trainer the towel toss where you reserve 3 machines at a time? Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about this, because I think this is probably something that irritates a lot of people as much as it does me. People just don't behave themselves. They have no manners in the gym. Not everybody. Yeah. I get along pretty well with most of the people I encounter there. Yeah, you have your headphones on or your little AirPods or whatever, and you go about your business, and you don't actually interfere in other people's business. But some people just don't have manners. And I think they would be like that everywhere, including the gym. So it's not just there. They're probably just shit people most of the time.
Yeah, gym etiquette is
they
definitely...
leave their stuff lying all over the place. They're taking selfies. They're having loud conversations. There was a guy on Thursday last week having a full-on loud business conversation with his, I don't know who it was, must be someone he works with. And he thought this was so important for the rest of us to be entertained by. Yeah. You know, you're in a public place.
Yeah.
What do you say to people? Do you say something to them?
Yeah, definitely. Like a lot of the time, you can't put people too much in their place, but you obviously just, kind of just elaborate a little bit to them. You know what I mean? That this is just not just your
just lift
area.
That one eyebrow. Yeah. Like that. Don't make me fuck you up. Yeah. I don't just look like this. I can pack a punch as well. How do you get the body fat and water retention down before the competition? Okay, so this is a whole process that Dirk wants to know about. Can you give us the down low on how that works?
Yeah, so you obviously have your peak week. So your peak week is your final week before show. So now you must remember, your peak week before show, you can absolutely destroy your last year of preparation in your peak week. If
you can screw it up that badly.
You can screw it up that badly that you can actually get to stage and be so depleted and flat that you can't get a pump because you've messed up your sodiums and your waters. So you can't get a pump, so you look completely flat on stage. So this happens to quite a few people. But it's obviously, so building up to stage, so one of the healthiest routes to go about it. So you'll obviously start doing your decarb. You'll start doing your decarb in the beginning of the week. You'll start with loading your water. So you'll start with 6 liters of water on the Monday. Then you'll go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if your show's on Saturday, you'll probably build up... Thursday, you'll build up to about 10 liters of water.
Good Lord.
10 liters of water.
Yeah, that's a different league.
Yeah, so 10 liters of water, and then still taking your 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C morning, afternoon, and night. Then that Friday morning, when you go for your weigh-in, you will drop the vitamin C. You will only have about 2 liters up until 2 o'clock, and then you will have nothing from Friday till Saturday. So you'll cut your water completely. So now your body's in this hyperdrive
desperately
of flushing.
Thirsty, right?
So yeah.
But also because you've been drinking 10 liters the day before, your body doesn't know what the hell's going on.
That's it, yeah. So you literally just constantly peeing. So and the problem is this is one of the safest ways to do it. Then you'll also, depending on how people respond, you'll have like 250 or 350 mils of red wine that Friday.
Oh, okay, well,
so
at least that's nice.
A little bit of a...
And then is it true that after the competition, hopefully, in September you'll win, but then you go and you just fucking eat everything? Yeah. Is that what you do?
Well, that's what I used to do. No, I don't do it anymore.
What's the choice meal after something like that?
Normally a pizza.
Oh, really?
Milkshake. Yeah,
because you're craving that because you can't have it.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure. Yeah. Can you substitute? I know it's more expensive, but can you substitute the protein that you would normally have chicken or fish or something with steak?
Yeah, not when you're coming towards your leaning out phase, because steak's a lot more denser, a lot more calories in it.
Okay.
But normally during your bulking seasons, you can obviously implement steak. You know what I mean? You don't want to have steak too often. You don't have too much.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me what to eat.
Yeah. Well, steak once a day, but not 5 times a day.
Okay, yeah. Well, I can have steak once a day for sure. How's Blake's watch? What's this? How's Blake's watch looking so big on his arm? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Says Bitcoin Bot. Yeah.
Thin wrists.
Oh, okay. There we go. James, find that Arnold Schwarzenegger clip and show us some pictures of Blake in competition. Yeah, why don't you have those, James? Huh? Some people gym for others, some people gym for themselves. There's a big difference, says Wade. Yeah, I suppose that's also an important thing, is that for a lot of people it's recognition, it's winning, it's being in competition. But for some people, and I assume this has happened for you over time as well, is you end up actually, you're your biggest competition.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you want to get yourself, and listen, I think there's something amazing about this. Get yourself into the best shape you could ever be. And maybe that comes at a certain age, maybe it comes with training, maybe it comes with timing and making sure the percentage of water in your system is right. But sometimes it's all of those put together, and it can just work. And for that day, you're in the most perfect physical condition that you can possibly be from an appearance point of view.
Exactly.
It must be special because most people will never do that.
Yeah. And the thing is, to achieve it, like, is as much as there's the dark side of the prep and going to bodybuilding and, going through the hurt locker of complete depression and, you can get to gym and sit in your car, and the hardest thing in the world would be thinking from walking from your car to the gym door. And then you still got to do a gym session and cardio. You know what I mean? So it becomes one of the biggest mental battles ever. But as much as it sounds so negative, but achieving something like that and manage to get on stage and get into that physique that you've accomplished, it's one of the biggest satisfying achievements ever. You learn so much about your body and what
you've done it all. I mean, you can have a coach, you can have a sponsor or a list of things that you can put into your body or take out of them that'll help you. But in the end, it is down to you
to do the work.
There are people who have money because they've got a rich uncle or because they lucked out, found a job that was available at the right time, and they just had the talent to be able to pull it off, or the knowledge or whatever. But when it comes to your body, you are the author.
Yes.
You have complete blame if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
And you get all the credit if you get it right.
Exactly.
No one can ever work out for you. There are rich people all over the world who wish they could pay someone else to train for them.
Yes. Yeah.
But they have to do it.
Yes.
And there's nothing that can take that away from you if you've achieved it. I think it's tremendous. Okay, so we've got some good questions this morning. I mean, I usually give our audience shit, but they really deserve some credit today. James, feed them some crumbs or throw some sweets at the audience from the sweet jar in the office there, because they're doing very well this morning. And usually we treat them like shit, but look at this. We're getting great questions. What is the longest downtime that Blake has taken off from training, and how was he impacted?
The longest downtime I've taken off of training was probably, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I had cancer.
Jesus Christ, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So post cancer, you're now competing.
Yeah. So
That's phenomenal. What cancer was it?
So it was a rare form of skin cancer. I found it in my ear.
Shit.
Yeah. So I thought it was a pimple. So I went to the doctor. He tried to squeeze it. He said no, it was just like a gland or whatever. Went to a surgeon. They took it. They operated. They took it out.
Yeah, I heard the doctor's exact words were, "Oh, fucking bodybuilders, always trying to find something wrong."
Yeah.
No. So how, you went to another surgeon?
Yeah. So then I went to a specialist, and then they said, "Well, we'll operate to take it out." He said it was just almost like a dermoid cyst.
Okay.
So he said it was a cyst. So they cut it out, they tested it, and it was to be honest, I really can't remember the name. It's because sometimes when you go to those doctors, they throw words at you that are like this long. I have no idea what they're talking about.
But it didn't spread.
No, it didn't spread.
So
but it was 0.2 millimeters away from my gland.
Shit,
so if I had left it, I would have had lymphatic cancer.
Jesus.
Yeah, so I did treatment for 6 weeks. So I was off training for... Okay,
what treatment did
radiation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did radiation treatment for 6 weeks.
Hey?
Yeah, so it was rough. I still trained for the first 3 weeks.
What did the radiation do to your body? I mean, we know what it does to the regular person, but what did it do to you, who's used to being in shape, training 6 times a week?
Yeah, well, Funny enough, when people ask me, I pretty much say I felt like I was in peak week for 6 weeks.
Oh, that's how bad peak week is. All right.
Yeah, so I almost felt like I was in peak week for 6 weeks. I had severe diarrhea, I had slight hair loss, pain in my mouth, loss of a bit of taste, struggle to eat. So yeah, it was quite a process.
And that was 6 weeks of treatment, but how long did it take you to get back into the gym?
Back into the gym. It took me about...
That must have killed you, man. More than anything else. It must have driven you crazy to not be able to train because it's such a big part of your life.
That's it, yeah. So I think the longest I was off from training was 5 weeks. It was 5 weeks.
Okay. All right, so I don't have to feel bad about the 5 days that I've missed.
Yeah.
It's not great, though. Let me tell you, if I don't go, I just find... As someone who's not competing or... Here we go. Jesus, is that you?
Yeah.
Holy shit balls. Check those shoulders, dude. Huh? James, how often do you go to the gym?
I try every second day or so.
Okay, all right.
Good start.
You don't have arms like that?
No, I have noodles.
Very poor, James, very poor. Flex, what do you think? It is amazing. All right. Do you have to make those grunt noises when you pick up a weight, or is it okay not to, says Bebop? You don't have to make those stupid noises.
You don't have to make those grunt noises.
There's another guy, I haven't seen him for a while, but he also, every time, he wants everyone to know he's lifting something heavy.
Yeah.
Or else he's deaf, and he doesn't hear himself.
It could be.
You know, maybe that's it. Okay, all normal things... When you come out of the microwave, says Slippery Pickle. So you shouldn't be in the microwave. Okay, no one's climbing in the microwave. And then, hey, listen, why did the bodybuilder cross the road? He said he didn't. There's no walking on leg day. That's Betway, Professor. All right, well, listen, man, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming in this morning. There's another pic of you doing your thing. That's leg day. That's a lot of weight there. What are you pushing there?
Oh no, that's not a lot of weight. That was just a photo.
Really?
Photoshop. Yeah, that's only like 320s
Listen,
aside.
I think I can answer the question I asked you earlier about what the worst is to do. I think leg day is probably the worst, but lunges and squats are absolute fucking hell, right?
Yeah,
those are terrible things.
Lunges are so sneaky, man.
Horrible.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if without weights, even.
Yeah.
They still
just
make
bodyweight
you
lunges.
sore.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
They hurt you because it's entire
Disgusting.
quad movement.
It's a disgusting thing. It's a punishment. It was invented by torturers. All right. Very, very nice to have you here.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming so early in the morning, but then I suppose you got a full day of training ahead.
Yep.
Very good, man. And where can people find you so that they can follow, get some tips, maybe sign up for some online coaching and
Perfect. Yeah,
meal
well, they
prep
can
and all
follow
the
me.
rest of
I'm on bambam.11 for Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's my Instagram
All right.
page.
Well, they can look up Blake Morgan. It'll come up, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Should come up. So there we go. Don't be stupid. Just type his name in and you'll find all the handles. Good to meet you, dude.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. For having
All
me.
right, very good. On the way, you want to get into some international politics? You want to talk about some of the global affairs that are consuming everybody on social media? Well, you're in luck because we've got a guest who is able to, I think, articulate so much of what's going on and what we don't understand in the media at the moment. And she will be a great value add to the show this morning. So that's coming up. Brooke Goldstein in just a moment or two. Don't go anywhere.
In normal CPR, you have to find someone who's unconscious, who's basically not responsive. That's the first thing you do. Call for help. The next thing you want to do is check for a pulse. You can feel here on the wrist, on the inside of the wrist. You can feel on the neck here for a carotid pulse. You can feel here on your the groin for a femoral pulse. But the most convenient and easiest one is to feel for a radial pulse here. You can't do it on a bed. You can't do it definitely not seated.
Yeah.
You have to take the person and put them on the floor if they're sitting on a chair, and then on the sternum, on the lower half of the sternum, and that's just here, the lower bit of the rib cage, You can put both hands on, and you need to compress 2 to 5 centimeters deep. You need to do that at 100 to 120 per minute because that is a sufficient rate in order for you to pump. You're basically pumping the heart.
Yes, it's like manually doing this to the heart.
Manually doing that to the heart.
It's time again for Sport's Greatest Tour, the British and Irish Lions Rugby Tour. Rugby's first ever proper North vs South encounter, and one of the greatest traditions in the game. This time round, the Lions are off to Australia, and the perfect guest to bring us to life is going to be John Robbie. The ex-Irish international toured SA with the Lions back in 1980, at the height of the Lions culture. Is this culture still a thing that is alive and well? Or has professionalism watered this all down into just being another test series? Settle in to hear all about this, and of course what the Aussies will be bringing to the table too. It's episode 53 of the On The Bounce Show. It's the big Lions Tour preview. Let's get into it.
All right, you might have just caught a flash of James there as he ducked in front of the camera. We are back, and we have lots to do this morning, lots to talk about. There is plenty going on in the news. I just want to start off with a little clip from the President of the United States just yesterday. He stopped to speak to the media on his way to, I don't know whether it was Air Force One or Marine One. The helicopter was on the lawns of the White House. And this is getting a lot of attention. For some very obvious reasons. We'll talk about it in just a second, but take a look at this in case you missed it.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
All right, so obviously a lot of very stupid people are focused on the they don't know what the fuck they're doing part of this. But we've had, in the space of 2.5 weeks, a tremendous amount of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes activity, which has changed fundamentally the geopolitical power balance in a part of the world which has been in the headlines, let's face it, and part of Trump going, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, is because all of my adult life, the Middle East has been dominating the headlines. It has been a tinderbox, a fulcrum of international political tension. We've had Israel at the center of some of it. We've had Saudi Arabia and Iran in other parts of it. We've had Syria for a while, Lebanon. I mean, it doesn't seem to stop. And I think we're at the point now where we're looking at a very, very different Middle East to what we would have guessed in anybody's wildest dreams or nightmares might have been the scenario just before October the 7th, 2023. And that's likely as a result of a very big miscalculation on the part of those people who started what they started on October the 7th. I don't need to tell you what my position is on this because we get to talk about it often. But I'm thrilled to have someone here who actually is a lot more expert in so much of what we've discussed on the show over the years. And it's somebody called Brooke Goldstein. Now, you may have seen Brooke already in the media, but she's the founder and executive director of the Lawfare project, a legal think tank that defends Jewish civil rights worldwide. She also founded the Children's Rights Institute and directed a documentary called The Making of a Martyr. She regularly appears in the media and has authored Lawfare, The War Against Free Speech. So there are so many topics here that are close to my heart. Let's get straight into it. Brooke, it's nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to
Sure.
be here.
And I mean, what a week for news, right?
Yeah.
And you said when we were talking about it just before you sat down, there's a lot of bad info out there.
Correct.
I mean, I'm still waiting for the Ayatollahs, rage tweeting about there's going to be retribution, and I'm still waiting. I think Israel's still waiting, and I think Donald Trump's still waiting. But there's supposedly a ceasefire on it to go at the moment.
Yeah, I
Do you think it'll
that.
hold?
I love when people are talking about ceasefires with radical Islamist groups whose goal is to establish the caliphate and kill everyone, every last man, woman, and child while doing that.
Yeah.
The mullahs are not going to give up Iran voluntarily. There's also been a lot of misinformation and disinformation intentionally, especially in the weeks leading up to the Israeli attack. There was reports that we know now were false.
But we kind of know that we sort of expect that from Iran, right?
What do you mean?
Well, we expect them to lie and propagandize and spin.
Yeah, but when you're not going to alert, the United States is not going to alert Iran before an attack. And Israel, it was like almost like they were hiding in plain sight, because for months, or if not years, Netanyahu said, we are preparing and we will do everything and we are ready to strike now. And with all that rhetoric, they were actually preparing and getting ready to strike for the right moment. And so when, first of all, Netanyahu's son was supposed to get married the weekend that Israel started the strikes.
Did they put off the wedding?
Yes, they did. If the wedding even existed. I mean, there was just coordination, disinformation, public campaign by the two governments, which was actually very brilliantly done.
Yeah.
They wanted to pretend as though there was daylight between Bibi and Trump. And the truth was the exact opposite, that they were on the same page and they carried out a strategic strike. And the most important part about this is we are not at war with the Iranian people.
Yeah.
The strategic goal of these strikes is to demilitarize and denuclearize the Iranian regime.
I had this exact discussion with someone just yesterday, and I said there are only really two positions on this. It doesn't matter whether you are the pro Ayatollah Khamenei or whether you're pro Benjamin Netanyahu, whether you have sympathies with the situation in the Middle East from any point of view, or you don't. The only question is, do you think it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, or don't you? And we can take the decision tree from there. We can figure out a whole bunch of stuff after that and get into the nuances of your position. Because some people might have a nuanced position. I don't think many people do. I think for many people it's binary. So start with that binary. Is it okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon or not?
Look, I'll start with that binary from a Jewish perspective.
Sure.
Okay. If somebody, one thing that we learned from the Holocaust, I remember a Holocaust survivor saying in an interview when he was asked, after everything you've been through, what is the one thing that you've learned and you want to tell future generations? And he said, if someone threatens to kill you, believe him.
Yeah.
And it's that simple.
And Iran haven't been hiding the ball.
Iran has time and time again issued threats, not just against Israel, because they see Israel as the little devil in America, as the big devil. And, and they've been threatening to annihilate, death to America, death to Israel. At the same time, they are the number one state sponsor of terrorist groups that are actively going out killing people. They've killed over 1,000 Americans over the last couple of years. And then they are openly developing nuclear enrichment capabilities up to 60%, which is just below weapon grade. They have plenty of oil. They don't need this enrichment. It's clearly for weapons.
They've told us what they'll
for
do
civilian,
with it.
exactly for civilian purposes. Enrichment is between 3 and 5%. Okay, they've told us what they're going to do with it, and they were planning it. They were planning an October 7th times 1,000. They were going to overwhelm Israel under a barrage of rocket attacks from all directions on all of Israel's borders, with trucks and jihadis flooding into Israel. They wanted to do a great flood number 2, and Israel saw this and said, we will not tolerate it.
Yeah, while we can, we'll do something about it.
Correct.
Maybe it's also as a result of the fact that Hamas and Hezbollah have so spectacularly failed, and Israel's been so good at dealing with the threat that they posed.
Yeah, and it's a miracle that they failed. It really has everything to do with them and not to us. And
You think so?
There are reports that Hezbollah was supposed to attack together with Hamas. Mm-hmm. And if there wasn't a Nova festival, if there wasn't all of those beautiful, innocent young people who were martyred that day, the terrorists would have made their way all the way to Tel Aviv, if not more north. I know that 2 terrorists were caught in Herzliya, which is just north of Tel Aviv. It is a miracle that Hezbollah did not attack at the same time.
Right, so they just couldn't get their act together.
They didn't get their act together. Their attack, as you know, was the largest mass slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. In that perspective, it was successful. And frankly, with psychological warfare, I think that they've had some successes. What really bothered me is that the terrorists had GoPros on their heads for a reason. They wanted to film things. They wanted to upload it. Yeah. They have no qualms with what they're doing. This is their version of jihad, and they're very proud of it. Remember that video of the man saying, Dad,
I killed
the Jew, and them saying, I'm so proud of you. We then took that 47 minutes of footage, repackaged it, and became the film distributor for Hamas. And I understand in certain circumstances when you're dealing with world leaders or you're dealing with members of the police, but we were screening that footage like, fetishizing the footage of dead, slaughtered Jews for the world to see, to convince them, look, we deserve to live, we have a right to live. And still there was denial.
It is sickening to me that kind of thing had to be paraded around, that people who filmed it were the perpetrators of that violence, and that somehow for some people in the world that's still not enough. But let me try and be devil's advocate for a second here, because I know you're well prepared to deal with these questions. Let's imagine, as many defenders of Iran are now doing, that Iran was not close to a nuclear weapon. I'm going to put aside all the naivety you need to amass in order to pose and posit this kind of idea of how Iran might work. But let's take the argument that, Iran is just, this is like Iraq with the weapons of mass destruction. You hear this argument quite a lot on the internet from idiots. So how do you refute the claims that maybe Iran wasn't close to a nuclear weapon and Israel just saw a chance to malevolently take out their frustration on a nation that they say is the architect of all of these other jihadi groups of Shiite Muslims around Israel who are trying to destroy them, and they've got an existential let's call it an imagination of an existential crisis rather than a real one.
Right.
How do you deal with those
I tend
questions?
not to try and deal with idiotic hypotheticals. The facts on the ground is that Iran was, they say, at most 3 months away from achieving nuclear weapons. The IAEA released a report just this past June, which is supposed to be the objective world body. It's not this pro-Israel entity, so to speak, saying that Iran had violated the agreements. Iran themselves, it's like the bigotry of low expectations. Oh, those Muslims, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't really mean what they're saying. They mean what they're saying, and they've carried out these activities. The proxies, okay? If Iran right now is taking rockets and bombing hospitals and indiscriminately bombing civilians, what do you think the world would look like if those rocket heads had biological or nuclear or chemical weapons on them? You have to take the leaders of the Iranian state at face value. They're adults. They know exactly what they're doing. And you have to understand the theology behind it. We're dealing not with logical people. We're dealing with theological people who are radical Islamists who believe in reestablishing a caliphate, and they believe that they must kill the infidels, and they must kill the white people, and they must kill black Christians, and they must kill Jews as well, any other minority community. And that's why this threat, and I keep emphasizing this, the threat of radical Islam, the threat of theologically motivated terrorism, what you have on your border with Mozambique with ISIS is the same thing that Israel had on its border with Hamas. It's all the same, and they're all being funded by Iran, and this is factual, and it's provable. And it's being done out in the open. So you have to be completely delusional not to understand that reality.
So what do you think a best case scenario for the Middle East and especially for Israel might be? And what do you think the worst case scenario going forward might be? Because we saw Trump having his little tirade this morning or last night in America. And perhaps he is justifiably upset because this is a very fractious situation we've got there. So as you put it already, you said this couldn't have been more masterfully handled. I tend to agree. I think that from the American point of view, Trump was misdirecting them with things like, you got 2 weeks, and 2 days later he was sending B-2 bombers over there to sort out Fordo and Isfahan and Natanz. And Israel had done an excellent job already the week before by removing all air capabilities over Iran. And basically, you could fly a paraglider over there right now and you'd be fine.
Yeah, Israel has total control over Israel and America.
And Syria, of all places, I mean, Syria, which was run by Assad just a short while ago, and did everything it could to make Israel's life a misery. Apparently, they said, sure, you can have, you use our skies, go for it.
Look how
fly
quickly
right over.
everybody fell.
And you know, Saudi Arabia will complain about this after the fact, but they must have been a part of the understanding in the beginning, at very least. We know that the Abraham Accords have got about the closest that we've got to real peace in the area and a promise of real peace in the area for the longest
peace
time.
through economic cooperation, but we're also missing peace through the elimination of hate education. Right.
Okay.
One of the things that was necessary for Saudi Arabia, for example, it didn't sign the Abraham Accords, but it's in talks and it's coming round, was to stop the funding of its Wahhabi influence system within the United States and to revise its curriculum, which Saudi Arabia has done. It's possible. But when you see, millions of Muslims being taught in their schools, in their textbooks, by their television programs, their religious leaders, that they need to engage in a violent jihad and they need to hate Jews and hate the infidels, the future does not look peaceful. And when you have a power vacuum in the Middle East, as we have seen several times over the last 15 years, one of two things can happen. It can either get better or it can get worse. And the determinators of what's going to happen in Iran is the Iranian people. And you look at the targeted, precise strikes by both the United States and the IDF. They are taking out the nuclear facilities. They're taking out the military capabilities. I think there was also a strike by one of the famous prisons that held the political prisoners to rattle that building and hopefully open the doors. The job now is for the Iranian people to take over. This is not about state building. It's not about imposing democracy. It's about regime change for the people. It's about waiting really into the very last minute, giving Iran every last chance to take back, to make a deal, to stop with its incitement to violence. And when that didn't happen, we took that out, and now we're, retracting, and it's up to the Iranian people to decide how to govern their country.
Well, what would for you be the best case scenario going forward? Because we do need some kind of, at least an attempt at permanent change, peace, not just for Iran, but for the whole region, because there's been such instability. I mean, I don't think anyone has got a plan for Gaza yet. Trump says he's going to turn it into, a resort capital. But there is so much that needs to be done now. What do you think Israel's capable of doing? Certainly we know now that the intelligence and military capabilities of Israel have probably been horribly underestimated by Israel's enemies for the longest time. And perhaps we've overestimated the military capabilities of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. Maybe also we've got to give credit to Israel for having undermined those things at some level and having been able to counter them. Because, it's fine to think that your enemy is very powerful, but be able to do nothing about it. What does this leave in the neighborhood in terms of possible green shoots for the future? And what are the areas that probably require the most focus? Because I don't think Israel would have done any of this had October the 7th not happened. And I don't know that Israel goes into any military engagement without thinking, how's this going to end? What's the long-term plan?
Well, October the 7th was inevitable if Israel didn't do anything. And it was inevitable to happen over and over again. And, the truth is that when we pulled every last man, woman, and child and exhumed the dead bodies of Jews buried in Gaza and took them out of Gaza, so it became Judenrein.
This is what, 2005?
Yes, exactly. And left the greenhouses and left the factories.
That's a terrible word, Judenrein. That's from the Nazis.
Correct. It was Jew-free zone, no Jews, because apparently Jews living in Judea is a provocation for violence. Okay, and the whole world was pressuring Israel, create a Palestinian state, you're an illegal occupier of Gaza, and all those false claims. So we took everyone out of Gaza. And then the world pumped billions of dollars into this tiny geographical location. And we knew and we saw our money was going to a designated terrorist group that was oppressing its civilians, political murders and oppression of gays, oppression of women. It was
headquarters under hospitals,
extreme Islamist enclave, and obviously they used the billions of dollars not to build, subways, but to build subterranean tunnels so that the terrorist groups can use civilians as human shields. And this all happened under our nose, and we saw it happening. So what did we expect to happen? My concern is that the Iranians have proxies and terror proxies around the world. And we know that Hezbollah has sleeper cells in the United States, and really the Muslim Brotherhood, which for some reason isn't being talked about as much as it should be, also is coordinated, across European borders and within the United States and Canada. And they are just not going to go down lightly. This is a theological, religious war for them. They believe they are commanded.
Are you suggesting that we're going to see retaliatory terrorist attacks on?
Well, my fear
possibly
is
civilian
that
targets.
There would be. That is my fear. And Jews around the world and American embassies around the world and are on high alert. Just take a look at a Jewish school and how the children go with armed guards
even
every
in
day.
South Africa.
They're always on alert. And this is the sad reality that we live in. And so we need to get these terror proxies under control, mostly by going after their financing. So I think step one with this warfare is the actual military bombing. Step two now, and you can see people like Elise Stefanik, who's focusing on the banking, is the terror financing.
She's a
and
US
going after the banking system. That has supported, that Iran has used, and also, by the way, Qatar is using to support terror proxies around the world. And then go after the members of government in various states who have been working illegally together with the Iranian regime to allow for the infiltration of radicalization in their country.
Is that one of the reasons you're here? Because we've heard about this cozy relationship that South Africa has with the Iranians. And there are all kinds of speculative reports about Iranian money coming in here. Various members of our government and past members of our government who are very close to the Iranian regime. Have you discovered anything in that respect? And is there stuff that you're looking for? And have you got appointments to see people here that might give us a little more clarity around that?
Do you want to know what I ate for breakfast too?
No, I think that these are worthy considerations. I know that you are someone who gets to the bottom of these things.
Yeah,
and you're interested in the answers to these questions.
I don't know more than really what is publicly available.
Okay.
And I think that, you and I both know that what is publicly available is exactly what you said. Questions into relationship between the Iranian regime and the ANC. In particular, when you have a constituency that is concerned with how they're going to get food on the table or how they're going to get their kids to school or how they're going to clothe them or are we going to have heat and running water. And all of a sudden, this group, ANC, that has an incredible history of anti-apartheid, turns around and, reverses its mission and says, we're not concerned anymore about what's happening within our borders, but now we're concerned with, adjudicating a foreign conflict where a designated terrorist group has attacked civilians, and we want to use the legal system in a lawfare manner to undermine Israel. It's obvious. So the question is why? Why the change of heart? Who is funding this? These are things that South African-based researchers are digging into, and more is being found, which is disturbing. I do believe that those who are more well-equipped than I need to take a really good look at whether election laws had been violated. You live in a democracy with a wonderful constitution. We have citizen rights to freedom of information. And if there is a case, and it does seem to be that Iran was unlawfully involved in any type of activities here, it should be examined and explored what legal implications that has.
It's interesting that you bring up Elise Stefanik, because she actually was in Congress. I think it was in a congressional hearing the other day. She mentioned MTN, which is one of our big telcos, and said that there are questionable activities, which clearly the Americans also have some side of, because they, of course, control the SWIFT exchange of international currencies, and they can see what transactions may or may not have occurred, and they probably have more information than either you or I have. But she's very firmly shone the spotlight on the dealings that MTN, who have, they've done business in Iran. I think MTN is the third biggest network there.
I think these banks have to be really careful, because the next step is obviously, once the military actions die down a bit, there's going to be huge government resources focusing on the banking system, but also focusing on individuals. There's been talk in the United States of potential sanctioning of banks and individuals. And I would just say that Iran, the IRGC as we knew it, is gone. And the Iranian influence is now going to wane. We have other entities like the Qatar Foundation International that's going around and doing slightly the same thing. But it's time for reconciliation, let's just say. And I know for a fact that there are members of Congress, and there are American organizations, and also South African organizations that are dedicated to ensuring consequences for that.
When you say reconciliation, we have a very different view of that word, but you actually mean let's reconcile the accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Let's do
and
a
see some
proper
consequences for bad behavior.
Okay, I want to talk about lawfare, because I think that this is also something that you are extremely well versed in. I mean, you may even have coined the term. The Lawfare project is an interesting thing all on its own, but I want to talk about what this means, what the word means, where it's been deployed, because it is kind of casually thrown around now, especially in American politics, as a pejorative in the case of any situation where the Republicans don't want something done and the Democrats do, or the Democrats don't want something done and the Republicans do. And then they accuse each other of lawfare as a way to kind of slow down judicial and extrajudicial processes. So what does it mean to you? And let's explain this from the ground up, as if you were trying to explain it to a child.
Well, I'm happy that you recognize that the term is a negative one.
Yeah.
Because when we first, introduced, the term actually was Islamist lawfare that I coined with my book, Lawfare, the War Against Free Speech. Lawfare was a term itself that was coined by U.S. Major General Charles Dunlap in a Harvard Law Review essay, where he was reviewing a Chinese strategy also about, if you can't defeat a military power on the battlefield, you need to engage in certain elements of asymmetric warfare, right? You see that in terrorism, right? So it's not army or military versus military in uniform. It's terrorists hiding behind civilians, so that when the civilians are killed, they can accuse the other side of war crimes and hit them where it hurts in the forums, that they're then going to manipulate. The forums that were established to uphold international law are now being manipulated to undermine international law, because we have this moral confusion, especially when it comes to so-called Israel-Palestine. So the lawfare term, it really means the use of the law as a weapon of war. And I first really discovered this when I released my film, The Making of a Martyr, a documentary film where I risked my life to go to Jenin, Ramallah, Tulkam, and Nablus in order to expose what I believe to be one of the greatest crimes against humanity, which is the indoctrination and recruitment of innocent Muslim children towards violence, to be child soldiers, to be used as child suicide bombers and as human shields. And for 2 years, I documented how children were being recruited by designated terrorist groups and being blown up sometimes by remote control. And what I noticed after I released the film is everybody who was doing what I was doing, which was going on the media and talking publicly and writing about the threat of radical Islam, 3 things started happening. Number one, they started getting physically and violently attacked. Recall the firebombing of Charlie Hebdo offices for the now infamous Danish cartoon with a bomb in his turban. The murder of Theo van Gogh. He was stabbed on the back on the streets of Amsterdam. His last words were, "Can we talk about this?" for doing a film called Submission about the treatment of women under Islam. And we all started getting slandered and sued, called Islamophobic, or finding ourselves on the receiving end of this frivolous lawsuits that are designed to shut us up, right? So, for example, I represented counterterrorism personnel who were sued by the very terror front organizations they were testifying against, which is insane. There was a famous lawsuit that my former boss was involved in where 17 media defendants were sued by the Islamic Society of Boston for uncovering the fact that Saudi funds were going in to radicalize the mosque. And lo and behold, the 2 Boston bombers were allegedly radicalized at this mosque, but because they were sued, the FBI shut down the investigation and nobody talked about it anymore because they were in the middle of a lawsuit. So lawfare is designed really as an intimidation tool to stop us from talking about these issues. And then you have it on the global scale. You have lawfare against Israel, lawfare against the United States. It was actually found in England that they captured Al-Qaeda manuals that instructed captured prisoners to file false claims of torture so they could reposition themselves in the eyes of the media and the world as human rights victims. That was actually one of the strategies in the Al-Qaeda manual. You have war crimes charges against Israeli officials so they can't land in the UK without fear of an arrest warrant. But Hamas and Hezbollah crossed European borders and apparently bank in European banks with total impunity, right? That's not justice. That's lawfare. When you have an International Court of Justice's opinion that a barrier, a security barrier that Israel builds out of brick and mortar is a violation of international law, but then the same court refuses to enter into evidence the very real fact that the fence contributed to a sharp decline in the loss of human lives, refused to enter into evidence the testimony of Muslim, Christian, Jewish terror victims. That's not justice. That is lawfare. That is manipulation of the legal system for warfare purposes. So that's what I wrote my first book on.
I think it's such a useful catch-all term, but again, that's been perverted too. So that the people who work with this and use lawfare as their primary tool for intimidation are also now using other people's very clear definitions of this and twisting that to mean something completely different. So it's almost been watered down. It's like. In South Africa, I often say that we've got a major gender-based violence problem. We've got a huge amount of rape and abuse of women that happens. But then in America, we had like the Me Too movement, which had the effect of taking small infractions and making them large, and taking large infractions and minimizing them so that they were all the same. And what it did is it watered down the category.
Yes, and it made the women's rights movement completely meaningless because #MeToo had more to do with virtue signaling against Trump.
Oscar-winning actresses who were cross about not getting a trophy versus people who live in absolute fear every day.
Right, or using a legitimate cause and politicizing it making it really about I hate Trump.
So there's that. There's the perversion of the law for the purposes of, as you say, non-military aggression, in effect.
To complement military aggression, right? So the perfect example is you have Hamas intentionally putting its headquarters in a so-called hospital,
Right.
which is just pretty much a building that says hospital written on it. There aren't
Right.
36 hospitals in Gaza. That would mean there's a hospital every 2 square miles. There's a hospital every 100 square miles in the United States. Like it's not feasible.
Well, this leads me on to the next question, which is about the PR impact of this. And whenever I speak to people who are thoughtful and have taken the time and trouble to actually pay attention to the information that comes out of both sides, I hate saying the both sides of the conflict because to me it's not as straightforward as that either. These people who ask, why is it that Israel is losing the PR war? Because their opinion of the situation is probably due to, again, them watching really bad news actors. But they believe that Israel is losing the PR war. They believe that Israel looks like it's morally and in terms of touchy-feely things being pilloried. They see Israel as the loser in that part of the argument. How do you respond to that, and what can we do about it? Because it's clearly a perversion of the information and of emotional manipulation.
Mm-hmm. For sure, absolutely, and it's one of the oldest tricks in the book, right? It's a blood libel that is amplified through social media and through the news to have the effect of dehumanizing the Jew and rationalizing violence, resistance by all means, for example, and then virtue signaling off that. But I hate when people say, no offense, Israel has such bad PR, as though it is Israel's responsibility to engage in a PR campaign to make everybody love it.
Yeah.
Right? I just don't think that's the case.
No other country is required to do that.
No,
by the way.
and I say to students that come to me, I say to them, you have no responsibility to engage in pro-Israel advocacy. You don't have a responsibility to make people love Israel, but you do have a responsibility to stand up for yourself as a Jew, as a minority, if you are being targeted and
Just as
harassed
someone
and
who likes the
discriminated
truth.
against.
How about that?
Right,
just as someone who likes the
we
truth.
had a huge lost opportunity. There was a strategic campaign, which I call the Islamophobia campaign, okay, which started back around 9/11, which was the 3-pronged strategy of physical attacks, lawfare lawsuits, and slandering anyone who spoke publicly about the very real threat of radically motivated terrorism as a shared threat that is faced between all Western democracies, not just Israel's problem, right?
I will never forget Christopher Hitchens saying, stand up to this nonsense while you still have the chance.
Right.
While you still can.
Right. So this Islamophobia campaign got so perverted that there was a police unit in Britain, I think it was the British Midlands Police Force, that knew about a child sex trafficking ring with Pakistani Muslims for 15 years. Young girls and boys were murdered and drugged and trafficked, and the most horrific things. They knew about it, but they refused to do anything about it out of fear of being called Islamophobic, which is the greatest irony and frankly insult to the Muslim population. If I risked my life to make a film about Muslim children, arguing Muslim children deserve to live, they don't deserve to have bombs strapped around their waist and to be blown up by remote control. If that's anti-Islam, right? What is pro-Islam?
Right.
If it's anti-Muslim to help little children who are being abused, what then is pro-Muslim? And isn't that the bigotry of low expectations? And for too long, we have responded to anti-Jewish discrimination and also appeasement of radicalization and terrorism with pro-Israel advocacy, as though our goal, is now to make people love the state of Israel. Our goal should be to make people fear radicalization, to have an interfaith allyship between Jews and the Jewish state and Black Christians that are being slaughtered just on our borders with Mozambique
Right, here,
by the same
in Africa, right.
and in Africa, by the same terrorist groups that are slaughtering Jews and other minorities in Israel. And that is the message. And people shy away from that message because they're afraid and because it's negative campaigning and it's not feel-good campaigning. But negative campaigning works because when people care about themselves, right? Why should I expect anyone especially living in South Africa, to give a hoot about what's going on in Israel or love the politicians. They've never been there. Like, why are we asking them to love a foreign state? But they care about their children. They care about if there's a direct physical threat on their children. They care about the porous borders here in South Africa and whether or not we have terrorist sleeping cells that are going to start blowing up Christian churches and Jewish synagogues, God forbid. Yeah. These are issues that we can all agree on and refocus the attention on what it needs to be, which is how to get rid of the threat of radical Islam and then how to reverse and stop the hate education system that now they're bringing here. And that's what they mean when they say globalize the intifada. It starts with hate education. The Nazis knew this well. In order to get otherwise average people to turn into monsters and justify the killing and murdering of other civilians as though it's required, you have to dehumanize the other. And when you globalize the intifada, they're globalizing the type of hate education that's needed to dehumanize the Jews, dehumanize the infidels, and prepare for violence. And this is what concerns me.
What also concerns me, I couldn't agree more. Everything you've just said, people should play on repeat or at least listen to again, because I think you articulate it better than anyone else. The other thing that worries me, of course, is back in America on college campuses. It's become very cool. It's become en vogue to be blatantly anti-Semitic. We see a rise of anti-Semitism, the like of which I certainly haven't in my adult life. I'm very, very concerned about the fact that it has become, there's this morphing of this kind of omni-cause in America. And by omni-cause, I mean the climate change people, allied with the LGBTQI people, allied with the Free Palestine people, are now also the Free Iran people. They definitely don't like Jews, and they definitely are opposed to capitalism, to liberty, to liberal democracy. This is a dangerous and growing coalition of people who have grievances with various groups, but they all seem to be pretty sure about the fact that they don't like Jews. What's going on there?
Right. And I mean, everything that you said is going on there and worse. There are mass radicalization on our campuses. This is something that has been going on for at least the last 15 to 20 years. Those of us in the counterterrorism community who have been calling this out for the last 15 years have been slandered and marginalized as, you named it, Islamophobic. And when President Trump and the Trump administration started to take care of the problem, what's so disturbing is that you have the radical left media coming out against him. And it's insane. How could anyone be against deporting someone who not only lied on their visa about their connections to a designated terrorist group, but then came to our country on a student visa, which is a privilege, it's not a right, engaged in mass civil rights violations, organizes mass assaults, trespass, advocates for terrorist groups? We have every right as a country to deport these people, and yet you have activist judges and you have the insane media who are arguing against this as though they have a First Amendment constitutional right to engage in lawlessness. I mean, this is Law School 101. Your rights end where my rights start. You do not have a constitutional free speech right to engage in unlawful criminal activity. And if we are so morally confused that we cannot delineate between the two, then I think we have a problem. And the other problem we have is the massive amounts of funding coming in from Qatar. $1 billion a year funding American education, critical race theory, so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion departments, Middle Eastern studies departments, opening up campuses for schools of journalism in Qatar so that they can, radicalize our journalists and then send them back to CNN. I call it, the greatest systemic influence campaign this world has ever seen. And thank God for President Trump, who's starting to do something about it. And even with the campus agitators, we have paid agitators. The FBI released a report showing that Iran was financially assisting paid agitators to come on our campuses.
There are lots of people who seem to be funding paid agitators. It happens in this country too. I don't know who is paying them because the lackluster and sad group of people who gather around the U.S. Embassy or consulate every time there's something in the news that they think they can get some attention for. People in kafirs arrive out of nowhere, and you can't tell me it's not coordinated, and you can't tell me that they're not doing it because they're being paid. I just wish we could find out who these people are. Are we getting any closer to discovering? You mentioned Qatar just now, who've played a very interesting game here. Qatar are trying to be friends with America, but at the same time infiltrate America and do huge damage to America from within. And we heard Trump saying, the great emir of Qatar, he's a great guy, he's my friend, we're very good friends, we've got a base there. I mean, what's actually going on here? Because are they trying to dupe both?
Well, I'll answer that in a second. I want to go back to the masked protesters.
Sure. Always masked.
We started a campaign in the United States that has taken on called Unmask Hate, where we are working for legislation to be enforced when it's on the books or to close the loopholes to make it illegal, in the commission of a crime to conceal your identity. And when those laws are enforced, we see a lot less of those, concealed protesters, and that might be an opportunity here. The other thing, my understanding is you don't have national origin discrimination prescribed in your anti-discrimination laws. I think that's something to improve, and really we have to look to close the loopholes of what allows this to happen. But look, first of all, that was a really good impression of Trump. I'm very impressed. But yeah,
it's getting better.
Qatar is sucking and blowing at the same time, and it's doing so with extraordinarily skill and capability, and they are so moneyed up.
Yeah, they got
and they are
lots of
just
money.
buying up everything and buying up influence and spreading their radical ideology, unfettered, except for my understanding in only one case, and that's with the lawsuit that the Lawfare Project filed against Carnegie Mellon University, which is the third largest recipient of funds from Qatar. What we know is that CMU received over $800 million in outsized donations from Qatar, which no doubt were then used to radicalize the population and is responsible for the over 300% rise on campus of Jew hatred and radicalization. So while we cannot stop the flow, the tsunami of money coming in from Qatar as a civil society, and particularly with this one lawsuit, at the very least, we can stop the money from being used illegally. And that's what we intend to do with this lawsuit.
It's amazing to me how the campuses have become the ignition switch for all of this. But there's a rise in global anti-Semitism, which has in Europe been a problem for a long time. I don't know. I'm sure you do. I don't know if some people in the audience might not know this, but I thought Benjamin Netanyahu, who comes under criticism sometimes, I think, fairly, sometimes very unfairly from people, as if they think there's someone else who could have done a better job during this very difficult time. But he said something a while ago. He might not even have been prime minister at the time he said it, linking a lot of what we see in Europe when it comes to, oh God, we don't want to be accused of Islamophobia, which harkens all the way back to the Holocaust. And there's kind of a guilt situation that hasn't been dealt with properly. And psychologists may have a better time of this than I will. But I thought that a speech that he made once on that subject did help me to understand quite a lot about the anti-Semitism that still persists in Europe. But in America, this is quite novel in America. There have always been people who hate Jews, just like there have been people who hate blacks, and there have been people who hate whites, and there have been people who hate rich people, and God knows what else all over the world. But there's something especially ugly and nefarious about anti-Semitism, which I think Douglas Murray explains very well, based on what he heard from, I think it was, I don't want to misquote him here, but he basically says, you can hate the Jews because they don't have a state, then you can hate them because they do have a state.
Yeah.
You can hate them because they're religious, but then you can hate them because they're secular. You can hate them because they stick together, or you can hate them because they don't. They live apart and they do different things. You can hate them because there are outward symbols of their perhaps, very devout and orthodox religion, or you can hate them because they're trying to hide it. You can hate them because of what they do and because of what they don't do, and so on. The list goes on. You can find a reason. It was Grossman that he was quoting.
I think it was a summary of Dennis Prager's definition of what is Jew hatred, which is, when Jews are communists, the capitalists hate them. When the society is capitalist, Jews are being accused of being communists.
It was Vasily Grossman, though, who said that he was explaining how anti-Semitism comes to be, and he said this interesting thing, which is, if you want to know what someone is guilty of, ask them what they hate about the Jews.
I was just going to say, so it's this mirror effect, right? That the enemies of the free world and of the Jewish state always accuse Israel of what they are guilty of. Mm-hmm. It's the mirror effect. And, Robert Greene, in his book, 48 Laws of Power, actually has a whole chapter about it. And it's so perverted, especially in the so-called Israeli-Palestinian context, that the entire foundational story of the Jewish people has been mirrored and inverted, right? There was an indigenous people in a land in the Middle East who were subject to colonialism, occupation, and genocide, who then the world recognized their right to a state, but that recognition and borders have never been fulfilled, and they've been denied their olive tree. Whose story is that? That's the Jewish story. Even the term, and that's now been used and perverted because in the 1970s, Yasser Arafat, who was an Egyptian, he's not Palestinian. Yeah. There's no such thing as an exclusive Muslim Palestinian identity, right? Yasser Arafat, who was an Egyptian, invented this new Arab nationality of Palestinians solely so that he could claim legal parity with the Jews in international courts and in the media for title to the land. And this exclusive Muslim identity is historical revisionism of a Palestinian. I'm Palestinian. My ancestors are Palestinian. Jews identified together with Muslims and Christians, and frankly, anyone who lived in Palestine as Palestinian because it was a geographical location.
Right.
My ancestors has Palestine stamped on their passports. The Jerusalem Post used to be called the Palestine Post. The Israel Orchestra used to be called the Palestinian Orchestra. And then when the establishment of Israel came into being, we changed our passports and it became the State of Israel. So this whole notion that Jews are not indigenous to Judea, if Jews are not from Judea, Italians are from Italy, Chinese people from China, Jews are from Judea. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing that they want to deny us. They want the world to think that Jews are from nowhere, right? Jews are not from Europe, Jews are not from Judea. And then where does the Jew have the place to live on this planet if that's the case? And that is the ultimate goal. And they use Lawfare, they use the mirror image effect to create this insane Orwellian upside down narrative where truth is false and what's false is true, and where a terrorist literally hiding its bombs under a maternity ward of a hospital is the victim of a crime versus the civilians that they are using as human shields. And then I also want to talk about the complete redefinition of legal terms like proportionality.
Yeah.
Right? Proportionality doesn't mean, if you kill 5 Palestinians, you can only kill 5 Jews or vice versa. And actually Douglas Murray said this well. He's like, well, what then would be the proportional response to mass rape and burning women and children alive? Is that what we should then go do to the other side? Is that proportional? The definition of proportionality in international law is that you can only use as much threat as necessary to completely extinguish the threat. So if someone comes to you with a knife, you use a gun to extinguish the threat.
Correct.
That's what proportionality means, and that's exactly what Israel's been doing. Israel goes above and beyond even what is required by the laws of armed conflict. You don't have to warn the terrorists with leaflets before you're coming. You don't have to do a knock on the roof so, civilians would exit. When those civilians, by the way, there are videos that came out showing civilians running away from a facility that the Israelis warned they were going to attack, which was being used by Hamas to store weapons, and Hamas taking out by sniper fire any of the civilians who were running away.
I'm not going to let you go before we talk about free speech and hate speech, because the definitions are, for some people, quite complicated, and I think we need to have a very clear idea of what we're talking about here in order to have a society where these mean anything at all. We don't have a First Amendment in South Africa. The First Amendment in the United States allows for free expression of most kinds. Obviously, you mentioned earlier where your rights start infringing on someone else's. That's where it becomes hairy. Hate speech is much more complicated because the definition of hate speech, even in our law, is words and thoughts and written stuff that will incite people to violence, but that is also hateful in its content. And when you get to hateful content, that's where it's kind of a gray area, because hateful content could just be what some comedians get away with. After all, isn't every joke at someone's expense? And then right up to propaganda designed to dehumanize somebody. And we have a history in this country of precisely that, to a degree that we're perhaps as sensitive as maybe people who are studying anti-Semitism maybe. So what are your guidelines in terms of trying to find a way to make this useful in the application of the law, and for people to understand what the limits of, if there are any, if there should be any, free speech might be?
Well, I don't think there should be one guideline for the whole world. I think that the free speech and hate speech laws that have been developed in different countries have been developed differently because of the history of those countries. So while the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution might be very appropriate for the United States because of our history, it perhaps is not so appropriate for Israel or not appropriate for Germany, right? So we're in the United States. You're free to be a bigot. You can say, I hate Jews. You can even say, I want to kill all the Jews, as long as it's not incitement to immediate violence. And if you want, we can discuss what that's all about. You can stand on a corner with a sign. But what you can't do is speech then plus action that harasses or targets someone.
Okay, then I think you and I probably agreed
But
yeah.
In Germany, for example, because of their unique history, their constitution or Bill of Rights, whatever it is, should probably support the banning of certain types of speech and potentially assembly and organization under particular political parties. Or maybe in Israel, why should Israel tolerate a mosque where a radical imam is preaching death to the Jews every day next to a kindergarten school after October the 7th? Yeah. Whereas in the United States, that would be protected speech.
Right.
So there's no, silver bullet.
Right.
But...
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a tension, obviously, between the two, and I happen to align as a free speech purist, and in my book I wrote about it, Lawfare, the War Against Free Speech. No matter how offensive what you're saying is, the truth must be told, especially about controversial issues, and obviously the controversial issue of the day at that time when I was writing the book, and I think still relevant today, is radical theologically motivated Islamist terrorism. And the last thing, the problem, if you were to think about hate speech laws, is you never know what's offensive until after you say it. So you can't really have a free society if people are going around suing based on their hurt feelings. So if you're going to have hate speech laws, you have to be able to draft them in a way as that when you enter into society, you're going to know what is allowed and what is not allowed, right? The Danish cartoon of Muhammad with a bomb, that is satire. Is that hate speech? Or are we going to restrict it to, again, incitement to immediate violence based on a group because of their race or ethnicity? The latter, I think, would be obviously a smarter law.
Yeah, well, I think you've said it pretty much in the best way possible. It's always going to be a case-by-case basis. And I think it's very hard to determine the intention of the person who's saying the thing, because sometimes their intention is to make people laugh. Sometimes their intention is malicious in the extreme and malevolent. And it's hard for you to get in someone's head and figure out precisely what they're trying to do when they say or think something, especially think, and we don't want thought police.
Right.
But the ability to say something, even the very worst thing, at least allows the people around you to make decisions based on what you've said and what you think.
Right, and
About
let's say
whether or
what
not
your
they want to be with
position
you.
is.
Sure.
What if you're a political leader in a stadium with 10,000 people chanting what you're chanting, and then they all go out and somebody gets killed? You have a different responsibility as a political leader than you do, I don't know, a comedian standing on stage trying to make light of the issue so that we
Right.
can talk about it.
Yeah, I think this will continue to be a very, very complicated thing to talk about, and particularly where people are extremely sensitive for good or bad reasons. I don't know that there are bad reasons to be sensitive. And I think it's just great that you're doing the work that you're doing. I'm glad that you're in South Africa. I hope that you have a very good time here in between all the extremely important work that you're doing. And thanks for coming to spend some time with us.
Thank you for having me. It's really been quite the pleasure. I've been looking forward to
Thank
meeting
you.
you for quite some time.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's very nice. Thank you. Same goes my way. Thank you, everybody. We will see you on Friday at 6 a.m.